I'm 1 minute away. Sure. All right, see you then.
Welcome to the Reality Whisperer Webcast. We would like to thank our sponsors. Dr. Mulder's Wishing Machine, the most affordable radionics machine found online. Amplify your manifestations as the wishing machine aids you in bringing your abundance to life. Visit freecharm.com/bradjohnson.html for more info and to purchase your wishing machine. Link is available in the video description. Portal to Ascension, online conscious events from renowned experts all over the world. Find out the latest scheduled seminars by visiting portaltoascension.org. Link is available in the video description. And Pot of Gold YouTube channel, profound compilation videos that share deep levels of truth and disclosure information. Link is available in the video description. And now your host of the Reality Whisperer Webcast, Brad Johnson. Enjoy the show. Hello everyone and welcome to the Reality Whisperer Webcast. Johnny Alpha is going to be joining us here in just a couple of minutes. He's just getting his Skype configured. Maybe just be some technical difficulties on his end. I just gave him a call and he's just getting everything set up here in the last minute. Well, better late than never. Anyways, we have a couple of announcements before we begin this evening's show, and Johnny Alpha is going to be joining us through Skype. So the first announcement is that we're going to have an Inside the Secret Space Program episode coming up here in late June. It is going to be on Saturday, June 26 at 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, and I believe that is also 8 p.m. In regards to Greenwich Mean Time for those of you in the UK. This is going to be on Google Plus Hangouts, and we're going to have special guests, Alina Johnny Alpha, and Justin Ibarra. And Justin is basically someone who has been working with psionic memories, and so we're going to have kind of a very interesting show relating to people who are having psionic memory retrieval, and just kind of getting a really interesting perspective on that. So I'm really looking forward to this second Secret Space Program episode that'll be coming up. So again, you guys can join on Google Plus Hangouts. Again, that's Saturday, June 26th, and we'll be taking live questions as well too through the Q&A app. So you can feel free to post your questions. And again, you can find the link on realitywhisperer.com. And our second announcement is Dream Mastery, Evolving the Conscious, Subconscious, and Superconscious Mind. This is also available on realitywhisperer.com. It's done through our sponsor, portaltoascension.org. So they're going to be hosting this amazing event, and I'm going to be talking a lot about really going into the dream state, into the dream plane, helping to access other aspects of your subconscious, and even being able to connect with the superconscious mind. We're going to be looking at dream sigils. We're going to be looking at light circuitry. We're going to be looking into how you can connect with your higher mind, your higher self in the dream plane. So I'm really looking forward to this particular one. And this is happening at the end of June. The date escapes me for right now. But you can go ahead and go to realitywhisperer.com and find out more information about this. Again, this is going to be a really amazing event. And of course, we have the Adronis free channeling webinar, which is happening this coming Sunday, June 12th at 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. So again, you can go to realitywhisperer.com. It's going to be on the YouTube live stream, just like the Reality Whisperer Webcast. And we're going to have a lot of amazing discussions. So Adronis is going to be talking about the fourth density shift. It's actually very interesting because I had a friend that contacted me recently and told me that she was at a Bashar taping just last weekend. And basically she had a question for Bashar. And Bashar basically had some confirmation with what Adronis was saying. So she basically said, oh, Adronis said this to Bashar, and Bashar was doing some confirmation with it, but I think he's also going to be doing some perspectives of his own through his own presentations that are coming up. I think it was just a really cool thing to get kind of another confirmation from another channeler, especially someone like Bashar. So that was a lot of fun. But Jonas is also going to be talking about intervention fleets and a whole bunch of different topics. So we will be taking live questions from the chat room as well, too. And again, that's Sunday, June 12th. And of course, the latest news is that we have in the works the Reality Whisperer Library. Now, this Reality Whisperer Library is going to be kind of like a Netflix. It's going to contain all of the pay-per-view webinars that I have done in the past. It's also going to contain some courses that can be found on realitywhisperer.com. And of course, it's going to contain some original content broadcasting, or I should say, original content programming. One particular show is going to be the Psi Academy, which is going to be talking about psychic intuitive development. And the other one is the second season of the Adronis Advancement Classroom. So this subscription video service, the Reality Whisperer Library, is going to be happening on Saturday, I think it's June 13th, if I'm not mistaken. No, it's June 18th, my mistake. Saturday, June 18th, that is going to be the launch date for the Adronis, the Reality Whisperer Library. I'm all like in two different directions today here. The Reality Whisperer Library, again, going to be happening on Saturday, June 18th. That's going to be its launch. And again, it's a monthly video subscription service, and it's just $9.99, just the same as Netflix. And so that's going to be really exciting, and I'm going to start producing some videos for that very, very shortly for the two original episodes of the Psi Academy and of the Adronis Advancement Classroom. Okay, so that is our announcements, and I haven't seen Johnny on. I'm going to see if I can just give him a quick call and see if he's doing okay.
Just signing in on Skype now.
Okay, great. Thank you, Johnny. We're just on the air right now, so I'll give you a call back on Skype. Okay.
I hope this is good. Here we go.
Okay.
Now they're updating. Here's the thing. Skype came on and says, "Oh, we're updating your Skype. This won't take long." So I've hit a Skype update here.
That may take a couple minutes. Well, while we're waiting, why don't we just get you on the air, just on the phone right now while we're waiting for Skype. Johnny, did you want to just kind of introduce yourself to everybody? So for someone who hasn't heard of you, how did this all begin for you relating to the secret space program and, of course, you getting up into space and going to Mars, of course?
And so forth, yeah. Well, it all started for real in the 1950s, but it didn't start coming back and start being public kind of a thing until 8 or 10 years ago, at which point I was unable to make any headway at all because I was a little ahead of time there, and we had to wait for, believable people like the military to show up before any of us would start getting taken very seriously at all.
Oh, there we go. There you are. I see you on Skype now. Okay, let me hang up the call, and I'll give you a call right on Skype.
Alrighty.
Okay. All right, sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. Just got some technical difficulties. Going to bring Johnny Alpha on right now. Hi, Johnny, you there? Okay, still being a little bit stubborn here. Okay, I have to hang up and call him right back. Sorry about this, guys. This is very interesting. I've been having kind of a weird technological day, or technological issue day, so hopefully we can get this back on. Let me just call him again. Okay, we are still having some technical difficulties here with Skype. Yeah, I'll just call him back on his line and see if he can call me on Skype and see if that'll help out.
Gotcha. I see you there.
Okay, Johnny, did you want to try calling me on Skype? I just tried to call you, but I wasn't able to get through.
Well, it just answered, and I just saw you. So let's just ring me again, and it should work.
Okay, let's try this one more time. Here we go. All right. Sorry about this, guys. This is so funny. All right, let's try this again. Okay, we got the spinning wheel of death here. Okay, there we go. Hey, Johnny, I can see you, but it looks like you're upside down. So, let me see here. Okay, I'm just trying to see if I can get Johnny online here. It'll just be a minute. Okay, Johnny, can you hear me? Okay, yeah, it looks like I can't hear you on your end, so. Okay, guys, Johnny's just going to be a moment, just trying to fix up his audio. It has been, like, again, a big karma day today relating to technology. So, again, my apologies, everyone. We're just trying to get everything in place here. We've just been kind of running a little bit late with the program today. But again, Johnny Alpha is part of the Secret Space program. He has some really amazing videos that you can check out on his channel on YouTube. Just basically type in Johnny Alpha Mars when you're doing a YouTube search, and you can find 3 really amazing videos that he has personally produced. And he gives some really great detail about his adventure, I guess you could say, going to Mars. Okay, here we go. Johnny, I have you on air. Yep, you're good. I have you on air now.
Real professional setup here.
You know what? As long as we can hear you, as long as we can see you, we're good.
This is an improvement over the previous times when I had to use a handheld microphone in order to get on at all because I don't have a modern laptop.
Okay. Well, this is fine. This will be all right. All right. Well, again, thank you so much, Johnny, for being a part of the show today. Again, sorry everybody that's just been having some delays. Yep. So
sorry about that.
So hopefully everybody in the chat room can see us okay. We are on the air and broadcasting. All right, so let's go back and let's pick up to where we left off before we had that Skype trouble. So Johnny, I was just asking you the question about how this all began for you, and of course you getting involved in the Secret Space program, and of course you were also in the Navy for a certain amount of time as well too. So did you want to pick up and say just how this all began for you?
Okay, in the 50s, just right out of the Eisenhower era, when I was involved, or just put into the program, if you will. And that at that time, we did all kinds of different things. There was probably a looser structure in those days. And just to remind people, there was ET happening. And so there was a lot of confusion and a lot of, cross-departmental confusion between everybody and different countries and the Navy and the Army and the Air Force and the CIA and all of it. So we did, I think, the first so-called missions that we ever did were for the Navy, and that would include going up in a jet as a first test mission before there was such a thing as rockets going into outer space. Then I was up 4 or 5 more times in early rockets, mostly test situations, and that was a lot of that was coming out of what you would think of as the CIA mind control programs, which are a whole complicated separate subject.
Yeah.
But that put not just me, but my family and people around me directly in the belly of the beast program. And after that, things just kept happening. And I mean, this is all based on the actual reality of ET in the solar system, such that they just did, down here on Earth, we just did whatever we had to do in order to keep up. And that would include, sending up younger people into space, of which I think it was myself and maybe 1 or 2 others who were sent up at different times.
So these younger people in space, did you say something that they were like prisoners or something like that they basically sent up to Mars?
No, nothing like that. I mean, the mind control program's not simple and obvious like people think. It's not a system. It's very personal, and so depends on the person, when they come in, what their connections are, what's required at the time. It's not a systematic program.
Okay.
I can't think of anybody else who was the only other kid who might have got shot up there. I don't. You'd have to ask the Russians who Leica really was, because I was the monkey, Eunice or whatever its name. I think it was Eustace or Eunice that was sent up. Apparently, a monkey was sent up, but really, that there needed to be a switch thrown, just one, during that mission. And no matter how many times they tested on the monkey, it would still miss throwing that switch 1 out of 8 or 10 times, and so that was far too risky. And so I went instead. And I remember that particular voyage as very pleasant, as blissful. I just was up there and everything went silent and I was ghosting along and there's the Earth and it's like, oh, there goes a little light on. I guess I throw the switch, job over. That was it. And so...
with you getting up into Mars, what was the propulsion system? Was it just a simple rocket that got you from Earth to Mars? Was there a duration of time, how long it took?
I explained just the basic construction of the little rocket that we sent up there in the early 60s, which was, I don't want to say cobbled together, but it was put together by various groups, just throwing enough money in to say, look, we've got to get a rocket up to Mars now or in the next year. Plus there was some kind of 20-year envelope approaching where this is the best time to go to Mars for the next 20 years or whatever it was. So if you're going to go, we got to do it here in 62 or 3, whenever that probe was. So 2 of us got in a little rocket, and just a 30-foot long tube that any metal shop could make. Maybe it was double hull. No computers needed. And 2 of us were towed up to the upper atmosphere by, I believe, a big Navy transport plane. And then we just dropped off the bottom of the plane at its maximum altitude, fired those rockets, and we're out of the atmosphere in a matter of seconds, traveling at 15, 20, 50,000 miles an hour before you can bat an eye. Because, as I've explained before, the main expense of that mission was the fuel. Very highly refined basic nitro fuel that will get you there in a big, big hurry. And without that, the mission wouldn't have been feasible. But we weren't going to land. We were just going to orbit and be slung back to the Earth, and that's exactly what happened.
Wow. So what was the amount of time that took you from, because if we're looking at a rocket ship here, we're basically saying that a rocket goes up from Earth and comes all the way to Mars. How long did it feel, or maybe how long did it feel to you to go from Earth to Mars?
All right, I remember getting out there into space and thinking, all right, we're on course. There's Mars. It's in the gun sight. So we sleep after a while. And I guess we slept for 6 or 8 hours and woke up, and it was like, oh, we've drifted a bit to the left there. We're back on course. I wasn't flying. My friend was the pilot type. And I guess it was, a day or two.
A day or two? Wow.
Or less. Because, as I say, this was the maximum, the closest that the 2 planets ever came, where it was a window of opportunity where if you could get going fast enough, get the Earth, because the science involved in this is not that complicated, but for science geniuses, but they had it figured down to the decimal place, and it worked perfectly. We were hurled by the Earth, thrown in exactly the right direction at the closest possible approach point, and if we hadn't done it then, we would have had to wait. Even if you'd waited another day or two, the mission might have taken a week or longer. I don't know.
Wow. So it's basically that there was an alignment of the planets. You basically had Earth right here. You had Mars in close proximity, and basically that shortened the travel time between Earth and Mars.
Exactly, and you could, I don't try to quote science, but somebody would be able to explain that to you. I had much more optimum time to travel.
So basically your intention was just to kind of hover or orbit Mars and just kind of get a look at it. And did this lead to you landing on Mars?
Well, years later, yes, it did.
Years later, okay.
That's a whole different scenario there. We didn't go up there. We still weren't capable of going up there and landing a ship and doing all of the things that we did without ET being involved. That changed everything overnight.
So with that first connection that you had, that first launch, was there anything that you saw when you were in that rocket ship, or was it just kind of a quote-unquote gradual, friendly trip?
Oh no, when the first time we orbited in the 60s, it was like a 3-ring circus on the surface of Mars. Couldn't believe what I was seeing. I had a Brownie camera, okay, an old Brownie, and we got video and brought it back. But that video is 30 seconds. It was about all we saw of the surface. But there was huge statues. There was huge creatures out, jumping up and down, waving at us, groups of life forms, complex-looking activity going on. It was just shocking, and it was over, and like I say, in less than a minute. And that was the first manned human visit to Mars. Even though there's been human beings transported between Mars forever, for thousands of years.
So what did you see on the surface when you were flying by? You had the camera, and what did you pick up? What type of life forms?
Statues, giant creatures, humanoids, what looked like ants, what looked like just aliens, crazy stuff. And we weren't particularly at a low altitude, but it was quite clear. The surface was quite clear. The atmosphere there is not very thick. It's clear. And there was full society running and civilization on Mars. Just like you've heard from other people.
So what was the briefing when you came back to Earth afterwards? And you said, oh yeah, we went to Mars and we got about 30-45 seconds of video here.
Right.
What was the reaction for that?
We're in the mind control program, and I want to talk to ET right now. If you're out there listening, don't forget that a lot of us people that have been doing this stuff have been doing it in the mind control program, and it works. We forget and don't know what we're doing. The information is offloaded to someone else. So if you make a deal with me or somebody else who's up there on Mars, and then go to follow through on that with some other human beings, they may have a totally separate agenda. And so this is very deceptive to aliens, especially the more honest races, like all the insect races that wouldn't lie. They might not see that at first, how nefarious and devious human beings can be. And so sending children up is, well, that's forgivable under the circumstances. But what they do with the information when we offload it to them is another thing. And the day after we came back from that mission, we might be doing something equally strange or weird, and have already put that away in our mind, and it's later totally forgotten. And even when we go up there 10 or 15 years later, you only have dim awareness of, oh yeah, I was part of this earlier, and the full memory doesn't start to come back until a certain point. In my case, it was a 50-year run, much like, say, Alina or some of the other people that have been in since they were children, and I mean, she was taken from the Ukraine. I think I was from around that part of the world too,
Yeah, because you were saying that I think you and Alina had a particular connection at that time working within the SSP.
All right, it's very interesting because her and also Laura Eisenhower, who talked lately, twigged memories, and I went, right, okay, that's the later stuff. That's actual organized secret space program once it became a real group, because none of this was real 50 or 60 years ago. This is everything you hear from all of us has happened in the last 50 to 60 years. So she twigged some memories, Laura Eisenhower. I remember now that ET, I guess a humanoid ET down occupying the body of a human being, who put on that display and pulled all those tricks on her just to say, all right, you will believe in ETs when I'm finished with you. And she did, right? And it's that memory came back. And I went, right, But the reason I'm not following through on all of those more up-to-date topics is pretty much here to deal with the past and our history and all of the events that led up to, starting with Ike Eisenhower and right around then, between then and about 1980. The whole thing happened. So I'm still dealing with that in human history, and there are so many deep little wells to go into of people and organizations and so forth that were involved in this behind the scenes who pulled this stuff off. Okay? So right away, you can't ignore Howard Hughes, for example. I could talk for 2 hours easily about where I went and what I saw and what I did and what he meant and what he did. Mr. richest man in the world, selling military parts and equipment to the United States government, involved in high altitude research and all kinds of illegal research. So there's a lot that went on that hasn't been cleared up yet. And then we get to all the situations with the world leaders and their connections to reptilians and all of it. So the idea here, I think for myself, is to try to deal with the last 50 years, and everything to do with the secret space programs going on now is fantastic. And I was up there on the ships and saw a lot of it, and we'll get to those topics because they're ongoing, but without an understanding of how the whole thing came to be, which we all have to chip in order to make that start to be visible to people.
So with your relationship, or I guess you say with your involvement with this particular program, were you kind of like one of the pioneers of the SSP, actually going from Earth to Mars and being able to go on this particular mission? Was that kind of like one of the very first missions that they started with you going to Mars, or at least on the North American side of things?
No, I was the first person, technically, in space, but that was just a test up, back. Second time, up, back. Third time, orbit, back. So no big deal, but, that's how they tested their rockets. Couldn't lift much above 50 pounds, but they had to do it. There was war on, there was a space race on, there was ET. We're going to do this, right? And I've come in and am just handy, and so that's what happened. They shoot me up. I have a 2-minute memory of throwing a switch. I come back down. Big deal. First person in space. Whoop-de-doo.
What about the? Because remember you were talking about in one of your previous interviews with. I think you said that they were sending like these prisoners up there, and they basically asked, "Well, what did you see up there? Monsters, aliens, insects? How did this all happen? What was the entire situation with that?"
That's the official 70s Mars mission, and that's involving ETs are here now. Before that mission, I was taken up just a few hundred feet in the middle of the night and met with various ET races, humanoid, intelligent, and others, like you can hear described. You look at them and go, what is that? And an hour later, you're not sure what that was. But it was an intelligent race in communication and in this, having a meeting. And as I understand it now, there's 4 different ET races that are pretty much here and helping us out, are involved in this, right? But the two guys that were sent up just ahead of the team of us, as a bunch of us went up, an alpha team would have gone in and done the actual, we're going to go right into Martian population here and deal with it. And other people were taken up with us at the same time who just more or less stayed in the ship or were showing parts of things and given different information, because there's a lot of it to learn. But the 2 guys that were sent up before us were, like I said somewhere before, they were just out of jail, and they were doing hard time, and they were heavy abusers, right, addicts and career criminals. And I guess they just chose these 2 guys, and they sent them up there. Now remember, this is all happening with the assistance of what people think of as grays. You can call all humanoid races gray, but that would insult some of them. But I'm not at that point yet about worrying about that. But we sent those 2 criminals up there. Yeah, and they came back, and we got to meet with them briefly. They were brought in, and they said, well, tell these guys what you saw up there, And I guess they were just being careful. And, and they said monsters, aliens, crazy carvings, statues, UFOs, all of it. They were reading. And I would hope that it straightened them out a bit,
Well, that's an interesting thing as well, too, because there's actually been a lot of revealing in certain documents, or I guess just certain images with Mars, and you're actually seeing these broken statues just like crumbled and are just everywhere. You have the heads of almost looks like a Greek statue, and is basically the head is just kind of rolling across the sand, and there's been a lot of reports about all of this kind of ruins on Mars. It looks like they've just been completely obliterated.
unless they've ruined them lately. No, the entire planet is carved. Everything there, it's different than Earth. It's they build everything into the landscape. They don't build structures. They tried to build pyramids in ancient times, but you can't build them there. There's just not the material. The life, or the surface up there, the rock of the planet itself, is very much lighter and more carvable. And they carve into the natural landscape. There's thousands and thousands of caves. There's no vacancy up there. There's all kinds of different insect life forms and different humanoid life forms and so forth, all living together up there in a civilized manner. They carve the head and the likeness of every single creature who has ever lived there. So if you go to a cave, of which there might be many on any certain location, there's the head of the original person who lived there. There's his son. There's the ape who was their pet, and all of it. And sometimes I remember coming out of a tunnel one time and just looking at hundreds of carved heads on the ground, all maybe 3 or 4 feet high. And they're very realistic and very skillfully done. And then you ask, and they say, oh no, those are all living people. That's their exact representation, those crazy-looking heads and pinheads and high foreheads and different types of humanoids and different types of ETs and whatnot. They're very, they keep records of everybody. So if a Viking soldier was taken up there hundreds of years ago and killed up there, well, his likeness is there, and it's very accurate. So it's a very artistic place. It's unbelievably beautiful. So when you look at images of Mars, you're missing the forest for the trees. Everything is carved, everywhere. And I can talk about the terraforming that I saw done while we were there, and it's just shocking what a large area, in this case the male alien, was able to terraform from that saucer, just into intricate carving. They're the master carvers, possibly, of the entire galaxy, and that's why Mars has been a tourist attraction.
So was there a feeling of like a previous human civilization on Mars, or was this something that was mostly just kind of like the insect or reptilian kind of home ground?
Oh no, everything, the way the Earth should have been, the way the Earth was, everything in balance. And boy, it's a different, and it's a much more civilized and advanced civilization than the Earth, where we have terrible, stupid paranoia over just different colors of people and different religions and groups. Up there, giant ants, humans, monkeys, weird creatures, you don't even know what they are. Everybody's fine, So the people up there, they said, oh, well, they're very simple, they're not educated and so forth. But I met these really nice, just human beings who are born there and live right next to a giant ant life form. No problem. So this is what the Earth was, and what this whole solar system was populated by all types of different species, at the same time, and it is possible for them to coexist, and Mars proves that.
So when you were basically going on the surface of Mars, and again, this is probably jumping ahead to the 70s, but when you were actually able to land on Mars, you were talking about a crater that you were able to encounter with some other I guess you could say, companions with you. And you were basically able to discover probably the introduction to some of these insectoid races, or the giant ants that you saw coming out of this crater. Would you be able to talk about what you saw more on the crater?
Well, when you go to that crater, which is where it would land, you're granted permission by the ant life forms, effectively, who are in touch with every other insect species telepathically, just like they're, the same mind. They can communicate as well as more reliable than Skype, shall we say? And it's their planet. So when you ask for permission to tour Mars, you're granted it. Some ants come over and say, "Yeah, okay, go on the tour with this humanoid." And away you go. And the centipedes would zip off with you, and around you go. So it's completely organized, civilized place. And, it's not like, like a movie or something where, what are these, they're totally aware of what human beings are and what the Earth is and our entire history and why we're not allowed to, coexist with Mars. The two civilizations are too far apart still. They know all of that. They know more than we do and always did. So the ants life forms and the mantid life forms and the centipedes, termites, and all the others, and all the humanoid types up there form a civilization, that's in touch and aware of itself. And the reptilians is a whole other issue, and they're looking like the problem. But that's a complicated subject there to get into.
So basically, you were saying that these ants that basically came about were just enormous, though, right? Like the size of cars, or even bigger.
The large wild ants, yes, they are like cows. That's all they are. There's a clear line on Mars, same as on the Earth, between what's a civilized, intelligent creature capable of being part of society and what's a wild creature that can't be telepathically or any other way communicated with. And they would stay in the wild areas of Mars and could possibly be hunted for food like we do here, right? But even more advanced than that, they're fully aware of every creature. If some kind of a mammal lives out in the wild, remote areas of Mars, nobody's out there hunting it. Mm-hmm. It's in touch with all the other life forms on the planet in a way that's hard to describe, because we have all of these telepathic races up there. I've said before, when we got up there, the word that we had arrived, Alpha Team from Earth, went around the planet as fast as the internet, and then all of the creatures who are not telepathic, which include human beings, and mammals, and other creatures with a skull and without the evolved insect telepathy or the higher-end humanoid ability to do same, well, they were all told. They said, oh, the Earth Team's here, Oh, is that what I saw in the skies, So it's one place, it's one planet, and this is the key point, is they don't want to deal with the Earth if we're split into countries and religions and belief systems and militaries and stuff. They just go, no, not ready. You're not ready. If you're not one planet, you can't really be in touch with Mars yet.
So with, again, going back into the crater as well, too, like you said that there are the ants coming through, like I think you said that your companions were also kind of getting a little panicked, being able to see these, giant creatures coming out, and even that one of them, I think you said, had like an anxiety attack.
Right, well, we didn't know that he had a phobia. We went down under that crater, and like I've explained, they do it in stages, so that you're not shocked and have a bad reaction, right? They show you something a bit weird, a bit weirder, a bit stronger, and then all of a sudden you step into that cavern and you will see giant insect life forms, and that's where the big shock comes from. But then they're quite ready at that moment to take you and put you in a nice cave and give you some water, and you can lay down and not have to look at it. And in fact, you can stay in there the whole time if you want and just get back in your ship and go back to Earth. You don't have to deal with them. Very civilized. It's like arriving somewhere where they know exactly what you are and how to deal with you, so that they don't injure you mentally, physically, just from shock.
So what was your experience when you were going into this crater as well, too? Did they start communicating with you psionically, or was that something that came later? Or?
Pretty soon that happened. We didn't get that till we went under the crater. There was incident where someone fell over a cliff out of just confusion, and he was fine. They grabbed him and pushed him back up, and everything was fine. But when we got under the crater, you could feel psionic power, if you will, or just that energy that they have from a distance. But it wasn't until they started to educate us that I put on this helmet, which connects to their stored psionic memories, which go all the way back past human history and back into their own history and the evolution of insect life forms and earlier life forms and reptilians and so forth. Then you get the full-on psionic experience where in an hour you can learn, equivalent of 8 hours of watching, video or something. and they can really fill you in a big hurry. In other words, put that helmet on for an hour. They don't have to explain anything else to you. You've experienced the history pretty much of this solar system.
So basically with the insectoid life, would they be kind of like the primary indigenous folk, so to speak, that inhabit Mars, and they've been inhabiting it for quite some time?
Yes, and they used to be the primary life form on the Earth, too, going far enough back. And all three of the planets, because our sister planet was there, had the same life forms, which is to say, all of them. The giant insect life forms, reptilians, humans and humanoids of different types, and they all existed on all of the planets in this solar system, and at different times have been enemies and had wars with each other, and then have come around and, like on Mars, insect life forms and humanoid life forms do coexist, and prove that such is possible, But I think they're still the primary rulers up there. I hope so, because they really had a great way about them.
So what do you mean? What do you mean by the primary rulers? How can you describe them?
Well, the insect life forms, just to generalize, in the galaxy as a whole, you can look at it as more or less like life on Earth, where the earliest forms were the insect life forms for millions and billions of years, and then came reptilians and humanoids and the more advanced. So up there, the hierarchy is pretty much, there's so many different species compared to Earth, say, which has been reduced to the human beings and, everybody else. Up there, everything is still the way it should be, where no problem with insects and humanoids together. So they were fairly separate from each other, as in they lived there but didn't really interface much. But that ended thousands of years ago in ancient Martian history, where the insect life forms and the humanoid life forms came back together and were able to coexist, and do to this day.
So basically with the insectoid races that once inhabited Earth, did they basically go through a migration period where they basically told, okay, it's time to get off Earth because we're going to start introducing the human race here and you guys can't be here? What was the formality of them leaving the Earth?
Not formality, it's just the worst scenario you could ever write. I mean, we had all of the different species here pre the big cataclysm that trashed the Earth. But we were all effectively slave races below the higher end insect-based life forms, who had reptilians under their umbrella just as surely as they had the other creatures with skulls, humanoids and all the others. And so the reptilian presence is very ancient and can be mistaken for the original rulers of Earth, because they were the only real ETs or, aliens left behind on the Earth. After the cataclysm, all of the giant insect life forms, which we would have been right next to, just working away as if there was no big deal. After the cataclysm, when the surface of the planet is effectively wreckage, there would have been wars to the death with all of the insect life forms until they were eradicated. Wars between the humanoids and the other warm-blooded, evolving animals and life forms that now populate the Earth. So this is the nightmare of the past that's just so shockingly alien and insect life form based that it seems like couldn't possibly be true, because where is all the evidence on the Earth of this, right? Well, it's been concealed. And so we have the situation where human beings and insect life forms as buddies, slaves of the same master. Then we get turned against each other and kill each other off on the Earth, whereas up on Mars, they manage to come back together, you see. So it's situational. In an ideal situation, human beings and insect life forms can coexist. But we've been conditioned for so long now that that's the enemy and that they're just mindless and evil and all the rest of it. when in fact any race that evolves for that long is going to be as evolved as human beings, or more so.
All right, well, we may come back into the insectoid races later on. Let's talk about the trisexual or trigender saucer people, because you've been talking a lot about them as well, too. Now, do you know who these trigender, trisexual saucer people are, where they come from, what is their particular agenda, being in part of our star system?
Right, well, that's our masters, that's our landlords, that's the ones who did it all here on Earth, not reptilians who do not, have spaceships and a huge organization and insect logic like the older insect life forms do. I don't know where they're from. Somebody suggested the other day it might be Deneb, one of the stars out there. It really doesn't matter because their kind are out there. And I don't know where to start talking about them, because that's the silver saucers, and they're the ones that were here all through history. And
so basically you were saying that they kind of have this kind of attitude, like basically treating life forms like property and all that, right? Yeah.
But they also have a highly evolved sense of humor. Best to think of ourselves as pets from their viewpoint and playthings. And the further back you go in history, the more they were interested in holding the huge land wars. That's their entertainment. That's what they were doing with human beings and insect life forms, all of which they're superior to. And it's quite simple. They had a highly powerful flying vehicle thousands of years before anybody else did. And it wasn't until the 1950s that human beings were able to go up there. And of course, every time we went up there, those saucers would be around watching, And it all starts right at the time of the atomic bomb and Eisenhower and all of that. Finally, some humanoid intelligent races who had been watching came on down and said, all right, enough with this giant race, insect race, more or less having their way with this planet and this whole solar system. So we went from a wild area outside the city to a suburb suddenly, and civilization slowly started to come out and come down and help us deal with, the saucers in particular, but a lot of other problems too. And we just jump.
Can you describe what this trisexual race looks like? What is their appearance? Maybe how tall are they? What does it mean when you're looking at a trisexual or a trigender particular race?
I know, that's explained this over and again. You'll find that the life forms on Earth, the really early ones, say water bears or almost, primitive insects and microbes, those life forms are everywhere in the galaxy, and they do continue to evolve up to warm blood and intelligence, just like we do, and that's what happens. So when you look at the male alien, you're looking at what was a water bear or some very simple creature millions of years ago that has now evolved into a very large, unique creature. And the same with the female. We see it as a wasp-like form, but that's just a basic form, Bees are incredible. I mean, I've seen bees are just, unbelievable. So these life forms are all out there, and these three seem incredibly unlikely. But don't forget the psionic end of things here. Their so-called trisexual relationship is actually more of there's a lot more to the pleasure aspect of things when you're talking highly psionically capable creatures. So we'd have the male, unique, I don't know what people have said, a turkey louse. Well, that's kind of, we don't want to think of that. Say a water bear. When people look at that and go, no, that's got a head at either end, and I go, yep, it did. He has that. And the female.
So you're basically saying that they have one head on the top and another head on the bottom? Is that what it?
Yeah, really scary.
Wow.
Those are female. I mean, not their fault, and they're highly intelligent and whatnot, but they are. Because of the way human beings have been conditioned, they are really scary.
Now, sorry, was that the female that has two heads, or was that the male?
Well, the male has the head at either end. You can see that carvings up there, and lots of them. And the female is wasp-like with the huge eyes. And the third member is like a serpent, but it isn't a serpent. It's a warm-blooded, 20, 30-foot long insect type. And it's more of a pet. Okay? It's still psionically capable, but it's not really involved in the actual... It would be more like the relationship between human beings and, a beloved pet or something. Except that they have a trisexual ritual where they form a circle and huge amount of psionic energy and pleasure that they get from that. It's just a typical fluke of the galaxy where you've got a weird race that just works.
So
I don't
are
even
they kind
know.
of like part human, part insect? Is that kind of their...
No, they're not part human. They're full-on ancient,
insect?
simple life forms that have evolved up into much more complicated and unique creatures that we identify as, that's like on Earth, right? We can only relate it to what we know. So we think that's a wasp, that's a bee, and sure enough they are, but they're not. They're more evolved than we are for millions of years longer. So I was enthusing about the bees there, and oh boy, their planet, the one that I saw, is just, that is an ancient and highly, highly evolved race. They're very pure, they're very highly intelligent, and they would be kind of like, boy, this place is a mess, this is we're above this. So they are, in fact, more advanced and evolved than human beings are at this point. Then we go beyond that to we all have the soul and everything involved there, so it all more or less evens out.
Wow. So you were mentioning that they were kind of very much into the entertainment of actually grabbing a couple of humans from Earth, taking them on Mars, putting them in this kind of pit or crater, and basically having them fight to survive. So it's kind of like a gladiatorial type thing. That was their entertainment.
Full-on gladiatorial has been their entertainment since the beginning, and that would include all the stories of the gladiatorial rings and combat here and the Christians and the lions. That's just a analogy for exactly what they would do with all species, their own species, all the insect species, all the humanoid species, all the reptilian species. They could mix and match and have these huge wars on the land, and then creatures could be taken from there or anywhere and put into these gladiatorial situations. It is the story of Jason and other people up on Mars who survived it. Well,
I was going to talk to you about Jason and find out what you had this psionic memory about Jason and his gladiatorial combat as well too. Did you want to talk about that?
Yes, that's the same thing. He's just one guy who was taken up there, with a bunch of other people, and survived the combat, and therefore were taken and placed back on the Earth. Because these creatures aren't mindless. They never, ever just took people just to kill them or put them in a pit and see what happened. It was always a staged event, which is why these events going on up there with the stage wars and the super soldiers and all of it, it's the same exact way. Okay? Yep. Thousands of years ago, if you were taken up to Mars and kept somewhere and then all of a sudden pushed out into a ring with a giant snake, well, they had calculated that, 25 humans. No, better make it 30. No, 25 should have a chance. Put some of the bigger ones like that. Literally to the point where they would be betting on it. And a huge audience would be watching this event.
So was this like the Insectoid audience? Like a bunch of insects would just come out and just start kind of like cheering on and say, yeah, get it, get him. Or...
Sure.
Yeah.
And up at the top... Up at the top of the crater would be the saucers, and filling the seats would be the hierarchies of insects, which are all very societal and structured. And you have beetles and termites and ants and mantids and all of it in the distant past. All of them would be there, and it was just their solar system. And human beings were at the bottom of the ladder, and this is the hardest part of disclosure and why it's been a problem for about 60 years now, is that we just cannot face. So when you hear Corey Goode or somebody say, it'll just knock you down, just knock your brains out, if you could see this Jason memory and actually be him in the psionic memory and experience it. It's just a completely insane nightmare alien situation, where human beings are not important. We're not smart. We're not organized. We're just there, and this huge insect life form empire is very slowly winding down, right? They're only on Mars now. Earth is disguised. It's no longer, their presence is no longer advertised there now. The original home planet where we were for 20,000 years, it's blown up and gone, and we've forgotten all about it. So when people say you're waking from the dream, you're waking from the nightmare, It really was.
So
And
what about this
insect-
this Jason memory as well too? Like you were saying that there was like a gigantic snake involved.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep. And this snake had been kept in a hole up there, and it comes out every month or 6, whenever they have this event and want the giant snake, out it comes. And maybe it's been killing everything in its path for 50, 100, 200 years. And so everybody betting would go, oh no, I'm on the snake. There's no way those 25 humans will kill this snake. Well, they did because of this one character, Jason. And that turns into an incredible event in the history of Mars. So they keep the records of that intact.
Yep.
In amazing detail. And you can experience it now. And that will show you the Earth pre-cataclysm, post-cataclysm, and on Mars, and then back on the Earth again. After that hour of that experience, pretty much the situation as far as anything else that you might see, how it would fit in. Whoa, that was how crazy it got, or what this place really was, pretty much representing the entire ancient wild galaxy that we live in, which I'll just go on a bit here because I wanted to mention the space ticks.
Okay.
The
Great.
space jellyfish.
Yep.
Because Randy, I think what you're saying about this, what do you call space jellyfish, space ticks? I talked about those as these ephemeral creatures that are floating around and are more or less parasitic on planets. Okay? And will gain the energy from the living planet, if you want to think of it that way. Okay? Well, a bunch of them cast off the Earth in the last 50 years. There were a whole bunch of them attached all over the planet, parasitically, and they're just directed off into space, where they can still live, right? So you're seeing these things out there, and I heard you say they resemble paramecium or amoeba, and you might see one off the sun or off a planet or something. Well, I thought about this, and it ties in nicely with what's called the wormhole, where you would travel from here, say, to Mars or to somewhere else in the nearby galaxy, and you're going to go through the larger universe, where when you shoot up in there and travel along and drop back out, you see life forms there, and they look like microorganisms, or you could see an ant would be towering up over your head. Basically, if you were to in scale in that universe, you'd be over 20 miles tall in order to exist there. So this whole dimension stack that people are trying to understand now, the first dimension away from us, everything is vastly bigger, has a completely different amount of energy required to live there, is much more, and it's you could think of it as a different vibration or a different density, and of course time is going to run differently there too, slower. So these floating creatures that are around our galaxy and around our 3D universe, they look a lot like microorganisms. Quite possible that they've just dropped down to a lower energy state from the bigger place, from the next dimension up, and are just down here going, how did I get here? Well, there's some energy, I'll go attach to that planet. So they may well be from the next dimension, which other people have been talking, and we'll probably have a lot more info.
Yeah, and that would explain a lot of with what the Earth is going through, because you basically have these fissures opening up in the Earth and seeing these kind of giant creatures coming out. Again, they kind of resemble that of paramecia or just multicellular organisms. and you're just seeing them latch right onto the sun, and you're seeing this little tether, like an umbilical cord, and just being able to see it, poof, just detach from the sun, and it just looks so organic, everything in regards to nothing nuts and bolts. A lot of people have been saying, oh, maybe these are just giant spacecraft, and say, no, these are life forms, gigantic.
Exactly.
Yep.
That occurs to me that they might be powering back up to try to get up into the higher energy next dimension.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of like sucking on the mother's milk in that way,
in order to build up energy. Yeah, because think about this larger dimension for a second. If you go in there and see what passes for an ant there, and it's towering up over your head, and it's not moving, or it's moving so slowly, well, the amount of energy to keep anything that big alive means that the whole place is at a much higher state of energy, okay? And there's no limit on bigness, as far as I know. I don't think God has put any limit on how large the universe is enclosing each other and so forth. However, you can understand that. So it's quite possible that these things are just, kicked down to a lower energy universe, viz. Ours, and will be powering up from the sun, trying to jump back up into their dimension, or just, I don't understand that quite, because why are they attached to the Earth, which they were, if they can just go to the sun and get all this energy? Well,
maybe it's almost like a choice of different flavors or something like that, or maybe there's certain forms of radiation that is actually coming off these planets that they enjoy more than just going right to the source of the sun.
The shocking thing with a lot of this stuff, when it starts happening to you, is it is quite down to normal things. Like, oh, they like it because it tastes better, or they like that because it's that color or something.
Sometimes it's just the simple explanations.
Right. So this is in the CIA logic. You can say, never tell a small lie. Always tell the biggest lie. Certain things are very simple and obvious, and yet, you can alter information so many ways.
But of course, it always goes to that Shakespeare quote as well too. Truth is often found in jest. So the idea is that the biggest joke you can think of, and say, oh yeah, there's aliens out there and they're conquering us and blah blah blah, and saying this guy just revealed the truth, but was just being so funny about it. Right?
Well, put right information in the wrong hands is something we did all the time. Yeah. If there was dangerous information, hand it to the people who are raving about something that people just don't even consider, and the information is devalued. There's common CIA tricks like that. Never tell a small lie. Right information in the wrong hands. Eggs in one basket, etc. There's all kinds of ways to cause things to not enter the public consciousness and something else to be inserted. Because mind control program, for anybody listening, became very, very interested indeed in how to control the population, not how to control certain individuals to go do work for them, even though that goes on. That's pretty easy. And it takes so few people. You'd be surprised how few people were used to do this. But the population must be controlled. That's priority one, because you're on the Earth. These are your minions, and they must be controlled at all costs. So a lot of the mind control program was about that, population control tactics.
So seeing the perspective about where things are today, what is your perspective in regards to where we're going? Do you feel that a lot of that form of agenda is now starting to crumble, or change management, or transition?
I think everything will be fine given time, but time to ETs means, well, let's just mess around here a bit and see what happens in a few hundred years. As an example of that, the creatures that the trisexual saucer ETs, the Denebarcons, or whatever we are going to end up finally calling all of these races, or I am, because I'm resistant to this, you see. I'm the guy staying on the ground and going, nope, my third eye tried to open, I slammed it, and that really happened. I'm down here, deal with it, here on the Earth, okay, until it's done or acceptable, or it's going in the right direction, So I think everything is going in the right direction, and that we are receiving a lot of help. The Earth has been cleaned up to a large degree. Now, it doesn't mean they're not chemtrailing you and doing all that, but overall, having civilized humanoid ETs arrive here has taken care of all of the worst issues, where if you go back 100 or 2 years, the world is just a very different, very cold and nastier place than the history books would indicate.
I think that's always true of the mentality as well too, because people always say, "Oh, look where we are right now. Everything feels chaotic." I say, "You want to go back into the medieval times, where you're always carrying a sword with you, and
Yeah.
God knows and knows." And then again, that can just be the lighter version of what our history is telling. Oh, there's a little bit of fights here. Maybe it's a lot more severe than what the storybooks or what our history has told us.
And can you believe the history books?
Yep, that's
They,
right.
I was going to get up for a minute, but no, you can't. You can't believe, other than they concealed the truth. The open truth started to be written out back in the Dark Ages, on the very surface of the planet, recarved and reshaped in order to conceal what had gone before. Okay? So the whole planet was carved over, effectively, or cleaned up. So that certainly include any writings by human beings, right? Just be 1 second.
Sure, no problem. All right, everybody. So we're going to be going to Q&A here in probably about 20 minutes or so. So if you guys do have questions that you'd like to share with Johnny Alpha, and just feel free to get them ready on the chat. I'll be pulling out the questions here just very, very shortly. Again, Johnny Alpha's videos can be found on YouTube. You can just type in Johnny Alpha Mars, and you can go to his channel, and you'll find 3 really amazing videos. And he goes into a lot more detail just in regards to kind of like the cookies and crumbs that we're talking about here tonight. So Johnny,
Let me
yeah.
one bit about those videos. I came up, I did not bother consulting. I just thought, this is too much. I can't trust anybody. I can't trust anyone connected with the government. I can't trust the New Age. People that have been saying this stuff for years and years and years. I can't trust anybody until I finally see that a bunch of people are coming in that locks together into what I can see is like, right, okay, now I see, and I remember, because all of us are getting memory back. When you listen to Alina talk, she's got astonishing stuff to tell you, but she's still remembering things.
Yep.
And it's like that, it's an ongoing process. So when I put those videos up there, I just went bleh, and couldn't, I had no notes, I had nothing, I just talked. And if I made a few mistakes, I said, fine, I'm leaving that in there to see who notices, just common mistakes or, big obvious ones. And sure enough, what comes back is, okay, we'll just take that and let's go ahead. So it was tremendous relief to find out that people were able to watch stuff like that, and, people making exorbitant claims like that, and not just come back like, you're nuts, you're crazy, because in the past, that's what would have happened to me if I'd have tried that in the 80s or 90s. Probably would have gotten in real trouble.
Yeah, it's a different time, different animal around that time as well. Let's talk more about the the other ships. I think you said there were other ships that you were going through in between your times of service. Were there other particular phenomena that you encountered besides Mars that really stands out in regards to memory?
On the Earth, you mean?
Pretty much anywhere besides your Mars encounters.
Gee, I wish I'd remembered the notes. I wrote up a page of notes, which I never do, and then I left them at home.
Oh, okay.
So, phenomenon. Boy, I don't want to start talking about the earthly stuff so much, because that gets into the structure of show business, Hollywood, music business, politics, groups, religions, and all of that.
Well, Randy Kramer said something very interesting to me. I think one of my first interviews with him was that he was saying that the idea of the unified field theory of the universe needs to be completely rewritten, because there are pockets, rather than the idea of thinking that, oh, okay, here's me looking in a telescope, everything looks kind of black and peaceful out there, but it's something completely different. Now, have you shared some particular idea in kind of seeing it like as a cluster or pockets of different phenomena?
I heard that comment, and I right away I thought, aha! They're out cruising around basically this solar system, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, I'm going to
The Radiant Guardian from Jupiter all the way down to the Oort cloud.
Correct, and they're running into different pockets of radiation, pressure, temperature, space jellyfish,
Yep.
and whatnot.
Yep.
So
Gas
space
clouds.
is not, and it isn't. But I would speculate that if you left this solar system and headed off for somewhere fairly distant, and you weren't on a commonly traveled route, that it might be fairly empty. Because I think there's a real good explanation for why there would be a lot of variance in space in this solar system, which has had a tremendous explosion beyond, what is probably seen very often in the galaxy. So there will be remnants and wreckage of that around this solar system for millennia. Okay? Other areas of space where nothing has happened for eons are probably fairly empty. There would be no reason. But the idea that space can't be traversed, like it's not necessarily a void, that's fascinating and it's incredible. When I heard that, I thought, yeah, okay, I can see why there would be some matter and why there would be space jellyfish and all of it all over this solar system, which has seen a lot of activity and has attracted a lot of attention over the last centuries. So yeah, there's all that stuff up in space, and I just love to hear from the guys that are up there about anything.
Have you figured out a lot about like how the galactic community behaves? Because we have all these different types of life forms. You have insectoid, you have the trisexual, saucer people, you have reptilians. Is there kind of an overview that you have received, perhaps through psionic memory, about how does the galactic community behave? Is there a consortium of different races that work together? Are there other beings that are just kind of going out and creating worlds, creating planets? What is the kind of behavior, if you may be aware, about the galactic community?
That's a good one. I mean, this is where I'm so relieved that Alina and other people that are ahead of the curve here on what I'm talking about.
Some of my favorite topics, too, so yeah.
Yeah, aware of that. Now, I know for a fact that there's 4 or 5 races resident in this solar system, and those will be the important ones. The galactic community will be out there and will be just amazing, but the 4 or 5 space traveling races that are going to end up registered as living in this solar system, well, I felt them the other day move off through the, just before a lot of this more recent information came out, and I just got the comment, well, no further guidance will be given. The train's on the track kind of thing. It wasn't to say, we're not going to help you anymore. It's like, okay, you're done. You know enough, and you can go talk enough, and your job is more or less clear off the past, deal with a lot of the questions people might have there, whereas other people are up in space with the SSP giving you hands-on from there, and other people are down on the Earth saying, I'm here to help the people of the Earth with these issues and so forth. So there's going to be more people, but not too many, who come forth with this, so that people can. That's on the Earth. The galactic community, I don't know. I'm not terribly impressed, because I think that some of the ET humanoid races who are here, gee, they're great, and we must venerate them, but they really are. But do they understand how nefarious and devious human beings are? Do they understand that they've been using people in the mind control programs and then taking the information and, around behind the back and doing all of these dirty tricks? They might not quite understand how heavily programmed the human beings were by a high-end insect reptilian minds for centuries and centuries and thousands of years. So if they come down here and just we'll just start messing around, let's mix these colors together here and see if we can do this and that, and trying to adjust the population of Earth without us aware of what's going on, that's kind of worrisome. So the galactic community, I'm sure, are just the greatest galactic community there is.
Well, again,
but
yeah.
be careful down here. I mean, we've had 30, 40,000 years of this. We're not all equal. We're not all just, stupid creatures, that are, you can mix and match. They need to show up before we can decide, and I'm happy to hear from the people that are up there, more or less communicating on that level. And I wouldn't venture any much more on it until I had a memory or two return, which if they haven't yet, then I'm not supposed to be talking about them.
Have you had some kind of contact with the SSP, like any executive officers or anything like that? Has there been any kind of recent physical contact with anyone?
No, they're down on the Earth, and if they do and come around and try, if they don't address me personally and directly and sit down at the table and say, "Hi, I am somebody," no deal. I'm down here on the ground. I have to live through this, and I've been here a long time, so I'm not interested in anything that isn't direct. And there's no reason for me necessarily to be in touch with the SSP so much if I'm aware of these 4 or 5 races, one of which could represent human beings, I suppose. Mm-hmm. We're kind of the new kids, as we've said before.
Yep.
So whatever these 4 races, or how many are here deciding on, what's going to happen with the Earth, that represents the galactic community as far as we're concerned, until such time as we actually have some kind of an open awareness of them, and they will deign to deal with us. But the way the Earth is now, I'll just go on, if a humanoid race appeared here and wasn't aware, and started floating over the Earth cities and looking at the behavior and everything, they would think we were pretty far down the chain of of things, because we have so much disorganized, stupid behavior leading to death on a daily basis that they're like, whoa, they can't even handle bicycles and cars. Maybe we should just wait a couple of thousand years on this bunch. We can't handle what we have, cars and guns and the things that people have, and we have all of this mindless destruction and death on a daily basis. That's not gonna fly with an advanced humanoid race. They're gonna have to change us or wait before we can join with them, right? The same would be true if a highly evolved insect life form race came here. They would hover over the planet, look at the cities, and go, look at that. They're just disorganized. They're not doing anything. They can't even get their vehicles to move. They can't even get through. They have traffic jams. Those are sub-insects, or just rudimentary life forms. Nasty, but true when you're dealing with evolved races that have been around for tens of thousands of years. They know what we are, but they can't just come down and fix us. We have to do that. Yeah. And that's the maddening part of all of this. I walk out into the city and go, great, secret space program, boy, oh my God, look at this. You look at the TV and see the news and you realize maybe not ready, So the idea that we're going to panic and freak out if ET shows up, fine, get it over with. It can't be much worse than this stupid behavior that people live on a daily basis anyway.
Well, what I've always found interesting about the human race is our ability to accelerate in that way, and that we've always just been kind of going through certain trends as well too. And will it take some time, I think, for us to actually become a galactic community? Yeah, I would say definitely. There needs to be, basically, when we get to a certain point, I feel that there will be an opportunity maybe for some type of mentorship to happen once we gain more of a state of awareness that other civilizations exist. We start to work along with the planet. We start to work with each other. It's not people bitching and whining back and forth about, no, this theory must be it, or no, it's this theory, it's this and it's that, it has to be that, etc., rather than just being able to come together for a common goal. Because I just think that really when we procrastinate and we whine and we bitch and we argue about certain things that really have nothing to do with our own evolution, that is basically just keeping us back. And it's kind of like looking at the kid riding the tricycle rather than the person who's riding the big Mercedes, right? So just being able to really, eventually evolve ourselves. But there's that feeling of trends, that we just kind of hit these trend marks and kind of move us in saying, well, let's see where we are in maybe a generation, maybe a couple of generations, and see if there's mentorship coming.
You just said it there. Is that we have the chance, and it will happen. And it's going to be slow, but every single person on the earth, don't expect ET to come down and improve your existing situation. You're going to have to go to them and make some effort in order for this to happen. And that means clean this place up to where, quite simply, if ET showed up in their ships and came down, they wouldn't feel endangered or like it was a disorganized place. So the people that are interested in keeping us out of touch with the galaxy, they want to dumb everybody down and keep you dumb and take a whole bunch of really dumb people and put them in dangerous situations. Oh, no, these human beings, no, they're not ready, no. These are human beings that have a stake in that because they're doing extremely well, and they just want things to stay the same no matter what. So we're fighting off. Here's the thing about civilization. 30,000, 40,000 years, then we have 60 years up at this end, where we've been technically actually in touch since, say, Ike Eisenhower. That's a pretty thin margin, and it's very, very hard to lose the weight of the past and the conditioning of human beings, all the negative things that have been going on, you know. So that just reminds me of Ike Eisenhower, just to change the subject back a bit to the stuff I'm trying to clear off, which is the past. When he had that meeting and went to the dentist or whatever he supposedly did, and that was the moment where E.T. was announced. Well, I think that what I remember later was you didn't even have to have even ETs come in and meet him, although they probably did in human form and said, look, we can show you a couple of things here that will convince you that we are what we say we are. Yeah. He said, okay, all right, what's going on? And then they would have showed him the evidence, all right, and said, look, this is what's been happening in your solar system, not just for a while, but all the way back. And we're going to be cleaning up and helping you, but it's going to take probably 100 years, 80 years, 60, 50. Yeah. And so to Ike Eisenhower probably didn't even tell his family any more than he had to. And he knew at that moment that he was going to die before this issue even got to the point where we are now, well before it. Okay? That was his load to bear. It must have been really tough. You know? It's just like, okay, all right, grind the teeth. Don't tell the family. Don't talk about it because it's not happening in my lifetime. That's how extreme of a change away from a 50,000-year period to a tiny little, oh, we'll fix that up in 10 years. No, you won't.
Well, that's just showing that, because there's been a lot of talk about, what Eisenhower went through and what he experienced, and just, really had to keep a very tight lip. And it's just very interesting that the last time before he just, resigned his commission was all about the idea of saying, beware the military-industrial complex, right? So it feels like there's just, you can tell there was just such a tight lip with him not being able to share. And I can just tell, like, in the way that he was just talking, that he wanted to reveal so much, but know that he couldn't.
Yep. Was, true to his word and his job, and did the right thing. But I was there when Laura Eisenhower was brought in, and it was actually funny. I don't know if she's even talked about the actual details. I remember the CT saying, okay, you're at home, and it's Monday morning. Go to work. Go ahead. And she'd go and have a whole day and come back home, and then all of a sudden she'd be standing there, and it would still be Monday morning, right? Something like just impossible, right? Far over the heads of most of the races, right? So by then we had some really serious ETs here, and they went, oh, the famous Eisenhower family. And I said, no matter what I tried, I could not convince her that ETs were real. Even if she knew that I was supposedly up into space and all the rest of it and connected to the CIA or whatever, she just would not believe. And everybody's that way on the planet. And they just thought, well, that is heavy conditioning. But, they could take individuals and convince them that indeed it was real in about an hour or less, right? Just by tricks like like they used on her.
Mm-hmm.
So I was there for that one, and you would think, oh, that's a huge event, but no, it's just one of hundreds of things that I forgot. And when it came back, it just linked in nicely, and I actually got a small laugh out of it, which happens occasionally.
Now, with a lot of the stuff that's happening in regards to disclosure trying to come out, especially around Mars, you were saying as well too that Earth itself needs to really unify itself before a lot more about what Mars's quote unquote truth truly is can be revealed. Is that true? You
could say that Mars is being used in a way to keep us from being able to disclose, because they're the neighbors. They're right there next to us. Mm-hmm. Well, if we can't have contact with them, we're not going out into the galaxy. And the reason we can't have contact there is the insect life forms and, the entire history of the Earth and the entire solar system on display on Mars. As soon as you step off on Mars, walk in and see a few things, everything changes to a different reality. And that's how we're unable to spread into the galaxy, because we can't get past Mars. We can't even accept Mars yet for what it is and what it was and what it means and how we're all connected. If we can't look at that, we won't be going any further in one way. Right?
Have you got any information relating to Venus? Because Venus, in that sense, another neighbor, relating to, again, there's been a lot of talk about humanoids that are kind of contained inside the inner Venus. Has there been any kind of disclosure relating to Venus pertaining to other life forms that exist there?
I don't want to talk about the other planets because I remember hearing about it, but I'm not up on it. So at the moment, but there is a way, and it's going to have to sort of be that way to do this, where they first originally talked about 57 types of IETs that have been identified, right? Well, those were just when we were there was a tourist ship there, and there was 40 or 50 different types of aliens walking around on Mars looking at the sites. So, yeah, the galaxy's civilized. It's out there. But this solar system has a very, you could say, dark, or, it's been damaged. And it's not. We've got a screen, apparently, around the planet now, so that we're in some kind of transition here. And the other planets in the solar system, yes, they'll have history going all the way back, and Saturn and all the rest of it. But we don't want to, I don't think I want to over mystify it or anything. It's all going to be of a piece and will make sense. But since I don't have direct intel at the moment, I wouldn't, just like everybody else, I won't talk unless I sort of have grip on it,
Yeah, from what Adronis has said, because I did a channeling not too long ago relating to Venus, there was actually one contact that was actually quite popular back, I think, around the 60s or 70s, that went by the name of Valiant Thor. And basically that he was a contactee, or not a contactee, but a contact, rather, from Venus, and was actually working within the Pentagon to actually try and help change things around as well, too. So there's been a lot of talk about human beings, very much like us, kind of like Caucasian. I think there's even other different races as well, too, that are just kind of disguising themselves, putting themselves in the government, and helping to connect and assist humanity in its growth.
Right. And now, as long as they don't have an agenda that is not visible, say, like maybe they're too much maternal or too much something, and they try to apply that to the human race without us knowing it, then we've got fresh problems. But the way you could see this being done is one of two ways. You could either have a very gentle awareness made of, look, other humanoids, and they've landed, and oh, there was a strange creature there too, and all, different types of life forms could start being revealed. Or else you could just have a big ship of giant beetles set down and walk out and go, oh, what a mess, and then fly away and let everybody wonder, But I'm sure they have some kind of agenda in mind for a way to have this all happen in the best possible way. But at the same time, there can be things going on that we're not aware of, and that the human beings are in a very weak position here, because we're not really together on all of the big issues. We're not even together as countries and people yet, able to dwell together without problems. So we can be taken advantage of, again, if we don't pull up our socks and get civilized.
Exactly.
And everybody everywhere, so that we can, because you see, Mars won't really deal with this. If we say, oh, we're the U.S. government, we're this, we're that, right? Well, there'll be, all the stuff that you can hear about has gone on up there in the last 50 years. So it all sounds like it's squared away here, squared away there, and it's all going to be fine. Well, things keep happening. So it just opens up too many questions if you allow this to stay secretive forever. It just makes matters worse at a certain point.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're all
Let's move on to. I think you said you had a psionic memory with Alina as well too. Now, do you recall what that psionic memory was when you encountered her?
Okay, it's very small, that memory. I remembered the uniform. She had this uniform, and it had to be just tickety-boo. So I was up there as a part of all of that stuff that was going on, and meeting all kinds of, and lots of stuff I haven't remembered yet. And that used to bother me, but now I understand that this has to happen in these stages like this. Because in the past, 7 or 8 years ago, when I was having a lot of trouble with these issues, you can burn out from too much information flooding, and I got to the point where I just couldn't take it anymore. I'd get up for maybe 5 or 6 hours, and then I'd pass back out for 2 or 3 hours and have to sleep for 2 or 3 hours, just from mental exhaustion. Even though I was keeping the food coming in and stuff, it was just too much. So it's still like that, in that it's a huge relief to hear from, oh right, that, I remember now. So yeah, she was a translator or something, and we can talk about this later, and I'm hoping that I'll get a lot of it back that way. And the same with other people who have showed up, who I just go, right, yeah, I do remember now. So I've said before how complicated this whole thing is. It really is. And it stretches across decades, and everybody's got returning memories. And we're dealing with ETs who have all kinds of, things that they can show you that can take your mind way off somewhere.
Yes.
And it becomes a matter of keeping control of it rather than remembering everything and just getting it all out at once. Yeah. I can't do that, and I don't think any of us quite can.
No. There needs to be time and transition as well. What I just find it very interesting is really the last couple of years, there's been so many new insiders coming in, relating to the SSP as well too. I've already talked to a few other people as well too who are starting to get psionic memories back about the secret space program, about having encounters with the Draco, about being on Mars and seeing exactly what Mars is, and oh my goodness, it looks all like Earth, and there's trees and everything there. It's fantastic. And so basically just starting to see this really huge burst of all these people starting to get this psionic memory. It's kind of showing us that we're kind of moving into new ground, that there's like a veil that's thinning right now, and now we're starting to get a lot of this particular psionic memory coming back with the SSP. Have you encountered other particular people, maybe besides Alina, that have also had kind of a retrieval of memories within the SSP?
No, only the ones that make it back to the point where they can talk for an hour and a half, and I can listen and go, right, okay, yeah, for real, and then you just feel, wow, another person who's going through the meat grinder, So it's more like that than, oh boy, we're a happy family. And the surface of Mars, not grown, there's no trees or anything on the surface like that. It's burnt. It was a destroyed planet. It took a worse hit than the Earth did from the same creatures for the same reasons. And hunting the giant reptiles from the saucer, blowing whole craters in the planet. Poisoning the
say that Mars is just completely like a charred battleground, like everything that once existed.
Burnt bad, and all the shallow seas that used to be all over the planet, gone. Whole races of life forms, dead, fossilized, still sitting there. We can't go up there, there's not bacteria up there, there's not building materials on the ground. It's pretty much what it looks like. It's rock, under the surface, tunnels made by the insect life forms, and mostly traveled by using the centipedes who pull the vehicles, and it's just like Alice in Wonderland. under the surface of the planet is where it's all happening. Right. So if you want to find any amount of water, it's down quite a ways. Okay, and you want to find those bushes and trees growing in great amount.
So that could be it. It's maybe just people getting memories about going into like inner Mars and seeing a lot of this, this stuff here.
Mars come up and go, oh, but then you always pop back into a tunnel to go to the next place. Yeah. And those tunnels are so long that you can, rather than go around the curve of the surface of the planet, you would go through and shorten your distance to get there via tunnels. So it's the hollow planet, always was, not the Earth, which has vast caverns, no two ways about it, and stuff going on, but it's not the hollow planet. Mars is the hollowed out planet. Exactly. And that's why you don't have life. And before we went up there in the first time, we had a photograph taken by one of the, whatever those missions, Viking or whatever, went up there and took photos. One of those photos came back with a giant ant on the surface. And they just couldn't believe it. They just, well, that must be gone into the photographic plate somehow or something and be in the picture somehow, but it wasn't. It was on the surface clearly in 3D with its shadow there. So something was going on. And all of that is below the surface of the planet, all happening down there. And then they come up, but there's nothing much on the surface anymore to eat or to do, unless they've been building it back up since we were up there.
So basically, you could say that Earth really has kind of like the inner honeycomb Earth, and Mars itself is more hollow. No.
Well, it's more hollowed out because of the.
More hollowed out. Okay.
The insect life forms can tunnel and can carve like beyond our ability to believe. They
kind of like looking at an ant farm, right, with all the tunnels and caverns.
Oh yeah, but much more
detailed.
Yeah, they would have the tendencies of like spiral tunnel to go down that crater. We went down what you'd call a Mars elevator to get to the bottom of the crater, which is maybe 100 feet below from the surface at least. And then we went down another spiral tunnel below that, another 50 or 60 feet into the planet, then emerged into a huge cavern, which had tunnels going off to all the rest of the planet, you know. So it is an internalized civilization internal to the planet, but that's just because the surface was so badly burned and destroyed that there's not much point living up there full time anymore. Right. Yeah. And don't forget, it's all being recarved over. When we were up there in the 70s, the purpose of the mission really was to clean it up and get rid of the horrifying stuff. Okay, the carvings, and just terrifying. Ancient galaxy, you know, all death and horror and primitive insect and reptilian stuff. It was real scary. And so a lot of it was knocked down and destroyed at that time. That was the point of us going around the planet, was to clean it up. And they've been carving over hundreds and thousands of other images. And there's human beings up there doing this now, of course, as well as the races that were always there. But they are redesigning Mars so that it will be much more acceptable to look at, and hiding, you know, the ancient past, which is pretty horrifying and pretty primitive. Now, the humanoid races that have come here, some of them may be quite maternal. In fact, I know they are. They really are conscious, you know, they want everybody to be involved, and, you know, we don't want to disturb and hurt people, and we're all very evolved, right? So they'd be in favor of getting rid of this ancient universe, so to speak, or galaxy rather, that we live in, and all of this evidence. It's to say we don't need that. That's going to really scare everybody. And those are bugs, you know. They're like a giant wood tick compared to us. They got no brains at all, you know. Even though they have these flying saucers and all of this power, they're not really important. They were just. This was wild. This is our house now. We're the landlords. Oh no, you didn't have termites. You know, you didn't. You know, like that. They're going to try to hide as much of the ancient scary horror, and it was real, you know. So, fine, you know, clean it up. But, boy, those who don't confront history are doomed to repeat it. So I'm not really in favor of hiding too much of the scary stuff, especially since starting with around the time of the movie Alien, you were getting direct representation of these creatures. Exactly. And people are more or less able to deal with it now much better than they were 50 years ago, say.
All right, very good. All right, we are going to go ahead and we're going to go to questions now. So I'm just going to go ahead and just tell everybody in the chat, if you guys do have questions for Johnny tonight, just feel free to type in your question in the chat. I'm just going to go in the chat here and see if we got any questions. Okay, we got a lot of people talking about flat Earth. Flat Earth, flat Earth, flat Earth.
No comment.
What's that?
No comment.
No comment, yeah. I think I'll leave that alone too as well. Let me just see. I'm just going to go up this chat here and see if there's any questions. Okay, we just have basically people chatting, so if you guys do have questions right now for Johnny, just feel free to share. I guess, again, the whole idea is that, what really caused the sister planet to explode, because that was quite an ordeal from what you were describing as well, too, involving the saucer beings. And just being able to see this, enormous planet become destroyed. Now, how did that whole process take place?
Well, that's in detail in that video, but it's more important to know that that's everything I'm telling you about drastic events in the distant past is insect intel. It's not mine. I didn't make it up. I'm not getting it from humanoids or anybody. And this is why I'm so adamant about trusting that. I might not trust humanoid races coming in with an agenda who showed up in the last 50 or 100 years, right? But when you get insect intel, and you can hear this from other people, they don't lie, they can't lie. So I got this from the ant races, mantids, centipedes, who are extremely ancient pre-human life forms.
Wow.
I also got it directly from the saucer crew, okay, who are quite proud to show you everything they have ever done and would not dream of lying for any reason. They're very devious and will fool you 1,000 other ways, but if you're talking to them, they'll just say, no, we did this, we killed all of those and did this, and so what? So all of the intel that I'm bringing out, not my idea, not my information, but it is coming from these races that I trust, and that you would too if you could ever encounter them. They just do lie. They don't have the facility. They don't even understand what that is. It's like, why would you do that? How could things work out ever? How could you have a society if you were based on lying? Little big lies like we tell and have been conditioned to. So I believed that information. So when I saw that planet explode, I went, well, there's the explanation for everything, for all of the questions about the extra planet and all of the situation with this solar system. Now, I was happy to find out about Nibiru, because I'm going, don't remember that. And then all of a sudden Alina explained it. Right, okay, that's something else. Okay, and the structures or whatever they are out in this solar system, that's something else again too, So the exploding planet, though, is the biggest concealed fact in human history. And I knew this, that things were wrong when I was this tall and we were taken to the Great Pyramid. All right. Now, the name I mentioned at the beginning of this, Howard Hughes, that's who I was with, and his team of expert people. So there we are at the Great Pyramid looking at it, and they don't know what it is. And the people of Egypt around them don't know detailed history of this incredible thing that you just think is the most impressive thing you've ever seen on the earth, right? Yeah. Well, if we don't have that information and it's been lost, that's enough right there to tell you that this whole thing is a dream and it's something other than what we've been told, right? Because it'd be just impossible to have a civilization like that and lose track of it through the ages and not go, well, who built this and why and what? It's not possible. So it's the same situation with the solar system. Once you see the exploding sister planet, we were in fact a beautiful binary planet. The Earth is maybe a female, and maybe it was our brother planet. That's the biggest event that I'm bringing out, and I'm not even going too too much beyond that.
Because what Adronis was basically saying as well too is we had the giant planet, and we had the Mars, we had Earth, we had Venus, we had Mercury, all of these kind of being these satellites just kind of orbiting around this big planet as well too. And then this disaster that happened was just what changed everything.
There was another small planet or large moon attached to our sister planet. It's still out there somewhere, and parts of it have been coming around and smashing back in, and it's just been going on for a long time, right? But the fact that this has been kept away and rewritten for human beings proves all of the theories of, we've been living in this dream world. Who's creating this? How do we get rid of them and ascend up to the next level? That's why I'm staying in the past, staying simple, staying direct until these things all reconfigure a bit, and we can get to deal with, clear off our own history.
Well, like I said, there will eventually be a time where we'll see a lot of this stuff. Maybe there will be opportunities for people to actually go out in outer space and say, wow, okay, this is what it's like, right? Because again, all we do is postulate, and people who have not been out there, you're just getting ideas and saying, okay, let's talk to the experts, let's talk to them and see what happens. But again, that's the lip service, and what's great is that we're getting a lot of this corroborative data. But until you're actually out there and seeing everything for yourself, I think it'll just be, to say it's going to be overwhelming will be an understatement.
Well, this is the thing, is when you get to Mars, it is overwhelming. And that's much more important than traveling in space to new worlds, which have all been explored anyway, pretty much.
Yeah.
And meeting aliens and meeting different species and learning to actually coexist with all of the intelligent life forms, no matter what they look like, no matter what their history is the challenge here, and is the future. Space travel is something that they do thousands of years in advance of us. And so far we've been given certain amounts of it, and you can talk to the guys that are out there now, the super soldiers, to find out where the tech is at and how much we've been allowed. Yeah. And they'll be able to talk about things and say, well, the wormhole, but who has that power to actually say, yes, we're going to use the wormhole to go here to do this, So again, what do we have up there now? The military and the corporations. Well, I kind of trust the military now because of what they went through and because of the way they were structured. They came out of it going, okay, we got beat, fair and square.
Yeah.
Here. Okay. Corporations and other human-based things, based on what's happened to me, still don't trust them at all. So this whole war that people talk about with the reptilian rulers and all of it, and I just want to clear that up a bit, is still going on. Now, Alina said a thing, and I got to deal with this. Queen Elizabeth, laughing reptile in the the energetic state, the etheric state. Right, yeah, sure. I even remembered part of that and went, right. So now think about that this way. Here we are, we're all part of show business, believe it or not, and that includes Queen Elizabeth, no different than myself or the musical people when I'm around, or there's Hollywood people, all of them. Yep. There she is. Okay, I wake up and I'm just like, I did what? And I'm what? Well, imagine being somebody more visual, public person, and I mean, royals are just, basically a front for the public to look at. They have to look right, talk right, do have a soul code of behavior and all of it. Imagine being someone like that, and all of a sudden one day going, geez, that's a bad dream. Wait a minute, what? And realizing that, yeah, you were part of something crazy. Well, now, can you come out and say, hi, it's me, the Queen. By the way, I'm having trouble with reptilian memories. Anybody else? No. You can't say a word,
Yeah.
So I just want to separate that for people. Nobody that's a human being down here on the planet is sitting in their castle and going, I can't wait for 9 o'clock where I turn into a reptile. It's not like that.
Yeah.
It's on a completely different plane where at the worst you'd call it possession. Okay, not demonic possession, but just ET with a highly evolved psionic ability. right?
Yeah, that's
So,
personally my take as well too. Is like there's a lot of people that say, oh my goodness, Hillary Clinton is a reptilian, or
fine.
the Queen is a reptilian. So you know what? Okay, that's fine. But really, I think what it involves is just being able to look at different types of hybridizations, different perspectives. I don't really feel that they're actually a Lizzie in disguise in that particular way. A lot of it
Right.
again just represents the idea of like a psionic mind control. I can get that, but really looking into the idea of, oh yeah, when midnight hits, my God, she's a lizard, right? And she's in her bed, and they're crawling out, and I'm hungry for flies, or whatever it is, right?
So this is for
So,
people, again, all this talking I'm doing, I'm just staying back,
yeah.
and dealing with and waiting for any interesting questions that might, because I see the process that's going on here. And when you listen to some of the stuff they're talking about now is just great. That's the future.
Yeah.
And the living planet, and we're all, and ascending and light workers and all very true, because we got to realize that the population's not ever going to get, most of us are not going to be able to stand on Mars. We're not going to be able to get our hands on this and really experience a lot of it. So people have to find a way to present the information to suit the human population now, so that we can sort of move ahead with it. And that's where I think that the ETs may have a better grasp of how to first expose human beings, and then see a little more, and then go, what are those big insects standing in the background there, just sort of tapping their toe? Oh well, we'll get to them. So it's
Okay,
pretty.
well, we're gonna get back into questions. So I think they're starting to pile up now. Sharanjeet asks, "What about the dark side of the moon? Do you know anything about that? About what's happening there?"
Side of the moon, it gets plenty of light. The moon is what it is.
I guess you could say the covered part of the moon that we don't see from Earth.
Right. Well, that'd be a perfect place to have all different types of experimentation, or be blending different species to see what's going on, like you can hear about from other people, which I think is accurate. Okay, I would trust and listen to other people talking about that. But the moon itself is, of course, simply the burned out remains of the original sister planet. Okay, The rest of it is spread all over the place because it blew up. Well, it's further away from the Earth than the original sister planet was. So we were really a tight binary system, almost sharing atmosphere. And those creatures could travel back and forth in a blink of an eye between these planets, and they had them set up for different functions, a whole different reality going back. So the moon has just been sitting there, being dead rock for a long, long time. And whatever they've been doing up there is, somebody else's intel.
So basically like a monitoring station, a laboratory.
Among us.
Yeah.
Sure. Why not? It's convenient. There's nobody around. It probably actually doesn't have much atmosphere, if any.
Probably not.
Whereas it does. So the moon was our original home. So, maybe not original home, but there were human beings there. I guess the Earth was there too, so we got a twin home, wherever we were brought from as primitive ape-like creatures.
Okay.
Nice.
What is here's another question from 777777. He says, "What is your take on the human DNA exchange programs?"
Well, I'm not up on the DNA exchange, but I'm fully aware of what's called the DNA harvester creatures and so forth. Plus, the DNA experiments that went on the Earth many, many thousands of years ago, resulting in the different races and all of it. It's really big issue, DNA. Just briefly, and I'm going to talk about this more, the ancient race that had this place running, all they wanted to do was have big land wars with the creatures here. So they would have the different colors set up against each other, okay, and they would alter DNA based on making them feistier and more energetically attacking each other. And so the different races on the Earth were all just the same, but have been gotten progressively more deliberately turned to aggression against each other, okay? So the issue of DNA is gigantically important, but what's going on now with DNA exchange, I'm not up on.
Okay. All right, so we're going to leave on to this last question, and this is from Tourmaline Dragonfly, and they ask, Johnny, what was the most amazing thing you've ever seen?
The bee planet.
The bee planet.
Yeah.
Can you describe that a bit?
All right. The question I asked was of the saucer archons who showed me a lot of different places. But when I asked about God, they hesitated, and they said, well, no, we don't know of a supreme being ruling over all the dimensions and galaxies and universes and all the different races. But we have this in the Milky Way galaxy. And I was shown a planet. I don't think we were physically taken there because it was back towards Galactic Central somewhere. But we definitely had a psionic memory of the last time their race had been there. And it's one of the significant, important hub of this galaxy. So we went there in this memory. And what's there is a hall, you would call it, made of blocks of stone that are so big that you can't believe it. They're like heavy green jade, too. They're not like limestone bricks that they used to make the pyramid here. These things are the size of a city block, and bigger. And that makes into a great, huge, arched hall that goes back. And as you walk up into it, there's a humming sound of like 5,000-pound bees somewhere that you can't see. It's just beyond awesome. But then you walk into it and you see that it's all cut in levels of rock, effectively, and all along are represented solar systems. Okay, and each solar system shows the planets, and then it would have the life forms, intelligent, civilized life forms that dwell there. Okay, so it's some kind of galactic registry or center point where all of the life forms in this galaxy are more or less acknowledged and brought together. And this is done by creatures that we would see. It's their planet as bees, right? And they are just absolutely beautiful and astonishing and amazing. And I actually only saw one or two of them physically, and they're as big as camper. They're just big, really, really big. And on their planet, which has very light gravity, is this hall of records of the Milky Way galaxy. That's pretty much the most heart-stopping thing, because a lot of other things are just beautiful thing, because a lot of other things are, violence-based or old galaxy, exploding planet, crazy stuff. That was just absolutely beautiful and incredibly encouraging, because I'm like, well, wait a minute, we're registered here. When did that happen? Just now or 1,000 years ago? Because there's still a lot of mystery as to what is going on way back in the center of the galaxy, or even not that far from us in space. We don't know everything yet.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been shown some really interesting stuff as well too about life on other planets. There's some planets that are just completely containing life forms of completely female species and no male at all, right? And there's a lot of stuff I can go into, but I think I'll save that for another show. But but thank you so much, Johnny, for a really great show tonight. Again, you're going to be joining us on the Inside the Secret Space Program June episode, and again, that'll be happening on June 26th. I want to thank you so much for being here tonight and showing just a small crumb of your wisdom as well too. There's so much more to talk about, but hopefully we'll get some more stuff happening at the end of the month. So thank you so much for being here tonight.
All right, thanks, Brad. Like I always say, it's never enough, but it's always too much, and then we'll get it right the next time.
You got it.
Or
Thank you so much, Johnny, and I will talk to you again soon in the next few days.
Absolutely great. Thanks, Brad.
You take care. Thank you. Goodbye. All right, guys. So we are going to just switch back to my camera here. There we go. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for providing your feedback, your questions as well. Again, I'm just kind of checking in the chat. Everybody's just having great conversation, so it's great to see community forming here on the Reality Whisperer Webcast. So again, the upcoming Reality Whisperer Library is going to be happening here again on June 18th. It's going to be an incredible library, a video subscription service, and I'm really looking forward to debuting it. Again, there's going to be 2 original series contained into the Reality Whisperer library. Again, the Psi Academy, and of course the Adronis Advancement Classroom Season 2. So he's going to be talking about a lot more stuff as well. It's really just going to be really exciting. I'm really, really excited about seeing this. I just saw this software a few days ago, and I said, "Oh my God, that's it! I want to make this library." And it's been something that's been on my mind for quite some time, because when I saw Netflix and saying, "Yeah, wouldn't it be cool if I could, put all my material in one place and start making these kind of weekly series for people to check out?" So that is a very exciting project that's happening here. And of course, got lots of events coming up, so go ahead and check out realitywhisperer.com. Thank you, everybody, for joining me tonight here on the Reality Whisperer Webcast. Next week, we have another special guest coming. His name is Randy Clark, and it is going to be about Dimensional Beings Part 2. So we're going to be looking more into dimensional beings. Randy Clark has had countless encounters with interdimensional beings, and so he's going to be sharing a lot of his wisdom with us starting next week, again, next Tuesday, starting at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. Thank you again, everybody, for being a part of the show tonight, and I look forward to speaking to you all next week. Take care, namaste, and may it be well with you. Goodbye.